Spirit Halloween Corporate doesn't want you to hear these stories. 4 employees broke their NDAs to share what really happens when the lights go out and the animatronics. What you're about to hear will change how you look at every Halloween store forever. Welcome, Night Wanderers, to After Dark Horrors. If you're new here, I'm your guide through the shadows that most people pretend don't exist. This channel is where the workers speak, where the witnesses confess, and where the truth refuses to stay buried. Tonight's stories come from 4 Spirit Halloween employees who reached out to me independently over the past 3 years. Each one signed extensive NDAs when they were hired. Each one broke those agreements to warn us about something corporate desperately wants hidden. Before we descend into these confessions, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Not for me, but for yourself. Because when more stories like these surface, you'll want to be among the first to know. And if these accounts disturb you the way they disturbed me, leave a like. It helps other truth seekers find these warnings. Now, dim your lights, check your locks, and prepare yourself. Because once you know what really happens in those abandoned stores after October 31st, you'll never walk past a Spirit Halloween the same way again. Confession 1. The returning customer. I need to tell someone about this. I've kept it inside for 2 years now, and every time October rolls around, I see those Spirit Halloween signs going up, and I can't let another person go through what I did without at least trying to warn them. My name is Madison. I worked at Spirit Halloween Store 1847 in Riverside, California during the 2021 season. I was 19, needed money for college, and thought working at a Halloween store would be fun. God, I was so naive. Everything was normal for the first few weeks. We'd set up displays, help customers find costumes, demonstrate the animatronics. You know the ones, those life-sized figures that jump out or move when you press the Try Me button. We had all the classics that year. The 7-foot werewolf, the possessed scarecrow, the fortune teller. But there was one that stood out. We called him the Ringmaster. He arrived in the 3rd week of September, shipped separately from our main inventory. No one remembered ordering him. The box he came in was old. I mean genuinely old, not artificially aged. The shipping label was handwritten in this spidery script, and the return address was just a P.O. box from somewhere in Louisiana. The Ringmaster stood about 6.5 feet tall. He wore this tattered red circus jacket with tarnished brass, buttons, black pants with gold stripes down the sides, and a top hat that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His face was unsettling. Porcelain white with a painted smile that was just a little too wide, eyes that were glass but somehow seemed wet, like real eyes with moisture in them. When you pressed his activation button, he was supposed to tip his hat, laugh, and say, step right up, the show is about to begin. Simple enough, except sometimes he'd activate on his own. We figured it was a wiring issue. My manager, Derek, loved him. Put him right at the front of the store where everyone could see him. The Ringmaster became our unofficial mascot. Kids were terrified of him, which Derek thought was perfect. That's what they're paying for, he'd say. The problem started in the 1st week of October. I was working a closing shift with my coworker, Jamie. It was about 9:45 p.m., 15 minutes before close, and the store was empty except for us. We were straightening up the costume racks when we heard it. Step right up, the show is about to begin. The Ringmaster's voice echoed through the empty store. Jamie laughed nervously. Motion sensor must be acting up again. But here's the thing about our animatronics. They were all plugged into a central control panel that we turned off at exactly 9:30 every night to save power. I knew this because I was the one who had turned it off that night. I walked over to check on the ringmaster. He stood exactly where he always did, perfectly still, that painted smile unchanging. The power cord was unplugged from the wall. Must have a battery backup, I told myself, though I knew that model didn't have one. We finished closing and left without incident. But the next morning, Derek called me, furious. Did you and Jamie think it would be funny to rearrange the store after closing? I had no idea what he was talking about. When I arrived for my shift, I understood his anger. Every single animatronic had been moved. The werewolf was behind the register. The fortune teller was in the dressing room. The possessed scarecrow was lying across the entrance like a barrier. And the ringmaster? He was in the center of the store, surrounded by the others in a perfect circle, all facing inward toward him. Derek made Jamie and me put everything back, convinced we were pranking him. We weren't. The security footage from that night showed nothing, just static from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Derek blamed it on the old cameras, but I saw the way his hands shook when he reviewed that blank footage. 3 nights later, I was working another closing shift, this time alone. Company policy said we should never close solo, but we were short-staffed and October was our busiest time. I kept telling myself it would be fine. At 9:30, I turned off the animatronic control panel. At 9:35, I heard footsteps in the back of the store. Not the soft shuffle of someone trying to hide, deliberate, measured footsteps, like someone walking with purpose. The footsteps of someone wearing heavy boots. "Hello?" I called out. "Store's closed." The footsteps stopped. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, and walked toward the back of the store. The stockroom door was open, which was wrong. I distinctly remembered closing and locking it an hour earlier. The footsteps started again, but this time they were coming from behind me. I spun around. The store was empty, but something was different. It took me a moment to realize what it was. The ringmaster wasn't in his spot. My heart hammered as I scanned the store. Where was he? How could a 6.5-foot animatronic just disappear? Then I heard it, that mechanical laugh, but slower, distorted, like a record played at the wrong speed. It was coming from the stockroom. Every instinct told me to run, to get out of the store and never come back. But I needed this job. I needed the money. So I convinced myself someone was playing a prank, that maybe Jamie had hidden in the store to scare me. I walked to the stockroom and flipped on the light. The ringmaster stood in the center of the room facing the wall. His shoulders were moving slightly, up and down, like he was breathing. "Jamie?" I whispered. "This isn't funny." The ringmaster's head turned. Not his whole body, just his head, rotating almost 180 degrees to look at me. The painted smile was gone. In its place was a thin, straight line. "The show," he said, but it wasn't his programmed voice. It was deeper, older, filled with static. "Must go on." I ran. I left everything. My purse, my keys, the store unlocked. I ran the 3 miles home and didn't stop until I was inside my apartment with the door locked and barricaded. Derek called me 15 times that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, he left a voicemail saying I was fired for abandoning my post and leaving the store unsecured. He also mentioned that nothing was stolen. Nothing was out of place. And the ringmaster was exactly where he was supposed to be. I never went back for my final paycheck. But Jamie did. She worked there for another week before she called me, crying. "Madison," she said, "I believe you now." She told me that she'd been closing alone when she heard carnival music playing from the stockroom. When she went to investigate, she found something that made her quit on the spot. The ringmaster had been returned to the store by a customer earlier that day. The customer, an elderly woman, claimed she'd purchased him the previous year and wanted a refund. The problem was, our store had only been open for 3 weeks, and according to our inventory system, we only had one Ringmaster. But there he was, in the stockroom, a second Ringmaster identical to the first, still in his box with a receipt dated October 31st, 2020. A receipt from a Spirit Halloween store that, according to corporate records, never existed. Jamie opened the box. Inside, along with the animatronic, was a note. "Thank you for lending him to me. The show was wonderful. I'll be back next year for another performer." It was signed with a name that Jamie couldn't read. The ink seemed to shift and writhe when she looked at it. The next day, Derek called corporate to report the situation. They told him to destroy both animatronics immediately and never speak of it again. They also sent a team to collect all security footage and had everyone who worked there sign new, more extensive NDAs. But here's what corporate doesn't know, what they couldn't possibly know because Derek never told them. The night before the corporate team arrived, Derek reviewed all our security footage one last time. He wanted to see if there was any evidence of someone bringing in that second Ringmaster. He found something on the footage from October 15th at exactly 3:33 a.m. The static cleared for just a moment, maybe 2 seconds. In that brief window, the camera captured the store. All the animatronics were moving, walking, dancing, interacting with each other like they were alive. And in the center of it all was the Ringmaster, both versions of him, conducting the others like an orchestra. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the audience. Sitting in rows of chairs that didn't exist during business hours were dozens of figures. They were translucent, flickering but clearly visible. Men, women, children, all in clothing from different time periods, some from the 1920s, some from the 1950s, some more recent. All of them watching the show with blank, empty expressions. And in the front row, clearest of all, was an elderly woman. The same elderly woman who had returned the Ringmaster, except, according to the timestamp on the footage, this was recorded 3 days before she ever walked into our store. Derek destroyed the footage, but not before showing it to me and Jamie. He wanted witnesses, he said, in case something happened to him. 2 weeks after the store closed for the season, Derek disappeared. His apartment was found empty, no signs of struggle, no note. The only thing out of place was a single item left on his kitchen table, a brass button, tarnished, the kind you'd find on a ringmaster's jacket. The police investigated but found nothing. Derek was declared a missing person and eventually people stopped looking. But I know what happened to him, and I know it's going to happen again this year and next year, and every year that Spirit Halloween continues to operate. Because I did some research on that P.O. box in Louisiana. It traces back to a traveling circus from the 1920s called Mordecai's Midnight Carnival. The circus was shut down after several audience members vanished during performances. The owner, Mordecai Blackwood, was never found, but his performers were, all of them, dead, still in their costumes, still in their positions, like they were frozen mid-performance. The investigators said it looked like they'd been posed, turned into props. Just like our animatronics, I don't shop at Spirit Halloween anymore. I can't, because every time I pass by one of their stores, I swear I can hear it, faint but unmistakable carnival music, playing backwards. And sometimes, if I look through the window at just the right angle, I can see him, the Ringmaster, not in his designated spot, but standing right behind the glass, watching me, waiting. The show, after all, must go on. Confession number 2, the overnight return. I'm recording this at 4 a.m. because I can't sleep. Haven't been able to since last October. Every time I close my eyes, I see those mechanical eyes staring back at me. And I hear that voice. God, that voice that shouldn't exist. My name's Tyler. Last year, I was the assistant manager at Spirit Halloween store number 2156 in Portland. I'd worked there for 3 seasons straight. Thought I'd seen everything: drunk customers, teenage shoplifters, even a couple having, let's say, an intimate moment in the changing room. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened on October 29th, 2022. It started with a return. We were 2 days from Halloween, peak crazy season. The store was packed from open to close, and we were all running on energy drinks and whatever patience we had left. It was about 7 p.m. when she walked in. She was maybe 70 years old, wearing this old-fashioned black dress that looked like it came from a vintage shop. She was pulling one of those collapsible shopping carts, the kind my grandmother used to have, with something large covered by a white sheet. I was at the register when she approached. There was something about the way she moved, too smooth, like she was gliding rather than walking, but I chalked it up to being tired. "I need to return this," she said. Her voice was pleasant enough, but there was something underneath it, like she was speaking in harmony with herself. "Sure thing," I said, pulling up our return system. "Do you have your receipt?" She handed me a receipt that was wrong. It was printed on our receipt paper, had our logo, but the text was faded like it was decades old. The date read October 31st, 2021, a full year ago, way past our return policy. "I'm sorry," I started, "but our return policy is only—" "Check your system," she interrupted, still smiling. "Order number 666613. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was her tone. Maybe I was just too tired to argue. I typed in the order number. It was there, in our system. An order for something called the Midnight Duchess. But here's the thing. I'd never heard of that animatronic, and I knew every product we carried. The entry showed it was purchased exactly 1 year ago, and that it had an extended return privilege. The notes section, which was usually blank, had one line: "Annual loan agreement, return before November 1st. See?" the woman said. "All in order." She pulled the sheet off the cart, revealing an animatronic I'd never seen before. The Midnight Duchess was beautiful in a way our usual animatronics weren't. She stood about 6 feet tall, dressed in an elaborate Victorian ball gown that seemed to be made of actual fabric, not the cheap polyester we usually used. Her face was porcelain, painted with delicate features: high cheekbones, ruby red lips, eyes that were closed as if she were sleeping. Her hair was real, or at least looked real, done up in an elaborate style with pearl pins. "Where do you want her?" the woman asked. Stockroom, I guess," I said, still staring at the animatronic. "I'll get someone to help." "No need." The woman wheeled the Duchess to our stockroom herself. I should have stopped her. Customers weren't allowed back there. But something made me hesitate. When she came back, she handed me a small brass key on a ribbon. "She needs to be wound every night at midnight," she said. "Very important. Wind her up, let her dance, then she'll sleep until next year." "I'm sorry, what?" "The instructions are inside her chest compartment. Use the key." She was already walking toward the door. Remember, midnight. Not a minute before, not a minute after. She left before I could ask anything else. I looked down at the key in my hand. It was warm, like someone had been holding it for hours, and there was an inscription on it that I couldn't read. The letters seemed to shift when I tried to focus on them. I showed the Duchess to my manager, Brenda. She was as confused as I was, but figured corporate had some special arrangement we weren't told about. She told me to put the Duchess in the back corner of the stockroom until we figured out what to do with her. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what the old woman had said. Wind her up at midnight? It sounded insane, but the key was still in my pocket, still warm, and I found myself checking the time obsessively. I lived about 10 minutes from the store and had a key since I was assistant manager. At 11:45 p.m., I made a decision that I still regret. I drove back to the store. I told myself I was just going to check on things, maybe look at the supposed instructions. The store was different at night. All those animatronics standing still in the darkness. their eyes reflecting the emergency lighting like cats. I made my way to the stockroom, using my phone's flashlight. The Midnight Duchess was exactly where we'd left her, standing in the corner. But as I got closer, I noticed something different. Her eyes were open. They were glass like all animatronic eyes, but there was depth to them. Looking into them was like looking down a well. I found the chest compartment the old woman mentioned, a hidden panel that opened with the brass key. Inside was a small metal cylinder, like the kind you'd find in an old music box, and a piece of parchment. The parchment had instructions written in elaborate cursive. At the stroke of midnight, turn the key thrice clockwise. She will dance for exactly 3 minutes. Do not interfere. Do not touch. Do not look away. When the music stops, she will return to sleep. Failure to wind her will result in forfeiture of contract. I looked at my phone. 11:58 p.m. Every rational part of my brain told me to leave. This was ridiculous. Animatronics don't need to be wound up. They run on electricity and basic programming. 1:59 p.m. But the key was burning in my hand now, actually hot enough to be uncomfortable. And there was something else. A sound coming from inside the Duchess. Like gears turning, springs tightening. Midnight. My phone chimed, and at that exact moment, the Duchess moved. Just slightly, her head tilting toward me. I inserted the key into the mechanism and turned it 3 times clockwise. The moment I finished the third turn, music began to play. Not from any speaker, but from inside the Duchess herself. It was a waltz, but wrong. The notes were in a minor key that made my skin crawl. The Duchess began to dance. It wasn't the jerky, mechanical movement of our usual animatronics. She moved with fluid grace, spinning and stepping in perfect time to the music. Her dress flowed around her, and her arms moved through the air like she was dancing with an invisible partner. I wanted to run, but I remembered the instructions. Do not look away. So I watched. For 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours, I watched the Midnight Duchess dance alone in our stockroom. And as she danced, I noticed things. The shadows in the room were moving independently of her. They swirled and twisted, forming shapes. Other dancers, a ballroom, an audience. For brief moments, I could see through the veil of our reality into somewhere else. A grand ballroom lit by chandeliers made of bones, dancers in decaying finery, and watching from a throne at the far end. Something vast and terrible that I couldn't quite perceive. The music reached a crescendo, and the Duchess spun faster and faster until she was a blur of motion. Then, abruptly, it stopped. She froze mid-spin, one arm extended, the other across her chest. Then, slowly, mechanically, she returned to her original position. Her eyes closed. The shadows returned to normal. The burning in my hand from the key stopped. Everything was quiet except for my own ragged breathing. I locked the chest compartment and got out of there as fast as I could. The next morning, October 30th, I arrived at work to find chaos. 3 of our regular animatronics were malfunctioning. The zombie butler kept repeating, "She's coming," instead of his usual phrases. The haunted doll was turning its head to follow customers. The werewolf wouldn't stop howling, even when unplugged. Brenda was frantic, trying to call our technical support, but the animatronics weren't the real problem. The real problem was the customers. Throughout the day, people kept coming in asking about the Midnight Duchess. Not browsing, not looking for costumes. They came specifically for her. Men, women, teenagers, elderly folks, all of them had the same glassy look in their eyes. Is the Duchess available? We're here for the Duchess. The Duchess is expecting us. We told them we didn't have that product for sale, but they wouldn't leave. They'd stand in the store, staring at the stockroom door until we threatened to call security. By closing time, there were 17 people standing outside our store, just waiting, not moving, not talking, just standing there in the rain, facing our windows. Brenda wanted to call the police, but I convinced her they weren't technically doing anything illegal. Truth was, I was terrified of what might happen if we tried to force them to leave. That night, I knew I had to go back. The instructions hadn't said what would happen if I didn't whine the Duchess. But that phrase, forfeiture of contract, sounded ominous. I arrived at 11:50 p.m. to find the 17 people still outside, now joined by more, maybe 30 in total. They parted as I approached, creating a path to the door. None of them spoke, but I could hear them breathing in unison. Inside, something was different. All of our animatronics had been moved. They were arranged in rows, like an audience, all facing the stockroom. I made my way through them, trying not to notice how their eyes seemed to track my movement. The Duchess was not in the stockroom. She was in the center of the store, and she wasn't alone. Standing in a circle around her were 6 other figures I'd never seen before. They looked like animatronics, but older, more elaborate. A plague doctor with a real leather mask, a porcelain ballerina with cracks running through her face, a tin soldier with rust eating through his chest, a marionette with strings that led up into darkness, a clockwork composer seated at a piano that wasn't there that morning, and a ringmaster in a red coat. The same ringmaster from Madison's story, though I wouldn't know that until later. They all turned to look at me as I entered. My phone showed 11:58 p.m. The Duchess's eyes opened, but this time they weren't glass. They were real, wet, blinking eyes that focused on me with intelligence and malice. "You came," she said. Her mouth didn't move. The voice came from somewhere inside her. "Good, the terms must be honored." "PM, what terms?" I managed to ask. "The annual loan, 1 night of freedom in exchange for 1 year of service." "But tonight," she smiled. And this time, her mouth did move, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. "Tonight is special. Tomorrow is the veil's thinnest. Tomorrow we can stay." Midnight. My phone chimed, and everything went insane. The music started, not just from the Duchess, but from all 7 figures. Different songs overlapping into a cacophony that made my ears bleed. They began to move, to dance, but it was wrong, hostile, violent. The plague doctor's head spun completely around. The ballerina's arms bent in impossible directions. The marionette's strings pulled him up into the air, and the Duchess, the Duchess grew. She stretched upward until her head touched the ceiling, her dress spreading out like wings, her arms reaching toward me with fingers that had become claws. "Dance with us," they all said in unison. "Dance until dawn and we'll let you leave. Refuse, and become part of the permanent collection." I looked around. All our regular animatronics were moving now, jerking and twitching in a mockery of dance. Outside, the waiting people pressed against the windows, their faces eager, hungry. I had no choice. I danced. For 5 hours, I danced with nightmares. The Duchess would grab my hands with her cold porcelain fingers and spin me until I was dizzy. The plague doctor would bow and expect me to bow back. The ballerina would leap, and I had to catch her, her body weighing nothing and everything at once. My feet bled in my shoes. My muscles screamed. But every time I tried to stop, they would close in, and I would see what they really were underneath the masks and costumes. Things that had never been human. Things that existed in the spaces between life and death. Things that fed on fear and madness. At 5 a.m., as the first hint of dawn touched the sky, the music stopped. They all froze in place, then slowly, mechanically returned to their positions. The Duchess shrank back to her normal size. The others became still. The people outside dispersed like fog. But before her eyes closed, the Duchess spoke one more time. "You did well. The contract is maintained for another year, but next time bring more dancers. We're so very hungry for new partners." I collapsed right there in the store. Brenda found me 3 hours later when she came to open. The 7 figures were gone. Not just from the store, but from our inventory system, from our memories. Brenda didn't remember the Duchess at all. The security footage showed nothing but static from midnight to 5 a.m. The only proof I had was the brass key, which I still have, and the scars on my feet from dancing. I quit that day. Didn't even give notice. But before I left, I did one thing. I searched our corporate database for any mention of annual loan agreements. I found seven stores across the country, all with the same note. Returned by November 1st. See you next year. This year, 2023, there are 8 notes because 3 days ago, I got a package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a brass key and a note. Thank you for being such a gracious host. We've told the others about you. This year, they all want to visit. October 31st, 2023, midnight. Your presence is not requested, it's required. I'm leaving town. Hell, I'm leaving the country. I don't care what the consequence is for breaking this contract I never signed. But I wanted someone to know in case I don't make it, in case they find me. If you work at a spirit Halloween and someone returns an animatronic you've never seen before, especially if they give you special instructions, don't follow them. Call in sick, quit, burn the store down if you have to because they're not animatronics. They're something else, something old, something that's found a way to use our fear as a doorway. And every year that door opens a little wider. I can hear music now, even though it's nowhere near midnight. That waltz in a minor key. They're coming for their dance partner. God help me, they're already here. Confession number 3. The Collector. I've been a corporate buyer for retail chains for 15 years. I've negotiated with suppliers from every corner of the world. I've seen the factories, the warehouses, the entire supply chain from concept to store shelf. I thought I understood how the business worked. I was wrong. My name is Rachel, and in 2020, I was hired as a temporary district manager for Spirit Halloween's northeastern region. It was supposed to be easy money. Oversee 5 stores for the Halloween season, make sure they hit their sales targets, then move on to my next contract. What I discovered was a hidden system that corporate doesn't just know about. They facilitate it. It started with inventory discrepancies. Every store I managed had the same issue, extra animatronics that weren't in our system. Not returns, not overstock, but units that would just appear. The store managers would shrug it off. Happens every year, they'd say. Corporate sends extras sometimes, but I'm detail-oriented. That's why companies hire me. So I started tracking these mysterious arrivals. Store number 331 in Rochester was where I spent most of my time. It was our highest volume location, and it had the most extras. By October 15th, they had received 12 animatronics that weren't on any shipping manifest. Each one was unique, handcrafted. Museum quality, really. There was a Victorian mourner in an authentic 1880s dress, a meat packer with real butcher's tools from the 1920s, a coal miner whose headlamp actually used carbide, not LED. The store manager, Dave, told me not to worry about them. Said corporate had a special arrangement with certain collectors. These pieces would be picked up before Halloween. No money would change hands, and we weren't to ask questions. But I did ask questions. That's my job. I started by examining the animatronics more closely. They were incredible. The attention to detail was unlike anything in our regular inventory. The clothing was period authentic, down to the hand stitching. The faces were works of art, each wrinkle and expression carved with mastery. But there were disturbing details. The Victorian mourner's dress had what looked like real bloodstains on the hem. The meat packer's apron was stiff with something dark. The coal miner's lamp had soot that smelled distinctly of sulfur. On October 20th, I stayed after closing to do inventory. I wanted to catalog these special pieces properly. That's when I found the ledger. It was hidden in the manager's office, inside a locked drawer that my master key shouldn't have opened but did. The ledger was old, leather-bound, with pages that felt like skin. It went back decades, long before Spirit Halloween was a chain, back when it was something called Samhain Supplies. Each entry was the same format. Date received, description of item donor, name collection date, payment, rendered. The payments weren't monetary. They were services. Things like 3 Nights Terror, 7 Days of Madness, One Soul's Despair. I was reading through this, trying to make sense of it, when I heard the front door chime. The store was closed, The doors were locked, and the alarm was set. But someone had just walked in. I crept out of the office and peered into the main store. A man stood there, if you could call him a man. He was tall, thin, wearing a suit that looked like it was cut from shadows. His face was pleasant enough, but his eyes were black. Not dark brown, but black, like holes in reality. "Ms. Rachel," he said without looking at me. "I'm here for the collection." I stayed hidden, but he laughed, a sound like wind through a cemetery. "I can see you, you know, through every eye in this store." He gestured to the animatronics. "They're all watching for me." I stepped out, trying to maintain professional composure. "The store is closed. You'll need to come back." "I'm Mr. Collector," he interrupted. "And I'm here for what's mine." He walked to the Victorian mourner and touched her face tenderly. "Beautiful, isn't she? She was a real person once. Margaret Ashworth died 1889. Cholera, officially. But really, she died of grief. Her husband sold her soul to me for another year of life. He got his year, and I got, well," the mourner's eyes opened. Real eyes, human eyes. They looked at me with such profound sadness that I nearly wept. "They're all real," Mr. Collector continued, moving to the meat packer. "This one was Thomas Brennan. Murdered his wife in 1923, then made a deal to escape the electric chair. He's been serving his sentence in a different way. Each animatronic he touched would animate slightly. A twitch, a blink, a subtle movement that suggested consciousness trapped inside. "What do you want?" I asked. "What I'm owed. Every year, Spirit Halloween, or whatever name the company uses, provides me with display space. In exchange, I don't collect on certain debts. Corporate debts. Do you know how your company really started, Ms. Rachel?" I shook my head. Joseph Marver, the founder, made a deal in 1983. His dying retail chain would become successful beyond imagination. But every year, he had to provide me with a venue, a place where I could display my collection, where the veil between worlds is thin, where people expect to see horror and don't question it. He pulled out a contract from his jacket. The paper seemed to be made of pressed ash. "Mr. Marver is dead now, but contracts like these don't end with death. They transfer. Every CEO, every board member, every district manager who knows the truth becomes part of the agreement." He handed me the contract. "My name was already on it." "That's impossible," I said. "I never signed anything." "You did when you accepted the position. Page 47 of your employment agreement, subsection 13B, very fine print. You agreed to facilitate all historical vendor relationships." I remembered that clause. Legal had said it was standard boilerplate about maintaining existing supplier contracts. "Now," Mr. Collector said, "I need this year's additions. The contract requires 3 new pieces annually." "I won't help you trap people," I said. He laughed again. "Oh, Ms. Rachel, I don't need your help for that. People trap themselves. Every broken promise, every betrayal, every moment of true cruelty, these create debts. I simply collect." He walked to the stockroom door. "But this year is special. 2020. A year of so much death, so much despair. The veil is practically gone. So I'm going to make you a deal." He turned to me, and for a moment his face wasn't human at all. It was something ancient, hungry, patient. "You can walk away. Forget all of this. I'll remove your name from the contract, alter your memories, let you live your normal life. Or you can become my recruiter. Help me find the truly guilty, the ones who deserve collection. In exchange, I'll give you something precious, the ability to see the truth, to see who's innocent and who's not, to know who deserves salvation and who deserves this." He gestured to his collection. "Why would I do that?" "Because you've already seen behind the curtain, Ms. Rachel. You know these things exist now. You can either be a victim of this knowledge or use it. How many people have you worked with who you knew were corrupt? How many times have you seen the guilty prosper while the innocent suffer?" I thought about my career. The executives who embezzled and got golden parachutes. The managers who harassed employees and got promoted. The suppliers who used child labor and got contracts. If I say no, then you go back to your life. But the knowledge remains. Every Halloween, you'll know what's happening in these stores. Every animatronic you see, you'll wonder if there's someone trapped inside. And one day, when you make a mistake, and everyone does, I'll come for you. I looked at the animatronics, at the Victorian mourner with her human eyes. Can they be freed? When their debts are paid, Margaret has 60 more years, Thomas 120. But yes, eventually they can be freed. And if I help you, I decide who gets collected. You identify candidates. I verify their guilt. No innocence, Ms. Rachel. That's not what I do. I'm not evil. I'm justice, delayed but inevitable. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I made my choice. Show me the ledger. The real one. With everyone who's currently in collection. He smiled and pulled out another book. This one bound in what looked like scales. Inside were thousands of names, their crimes, their sentences. Some deserved to be there. Others were there for minor infractions, moments of weakness, things that didn't merit eternal punishment. These terms are negotiable? I asked. Everything is negotiable, Ms. Rachel. That's how I became the collector's accountant. I review the contracts, audit the sentences, and sometimes, when I find someone who's served enough time, I negotiate their release. But I also scout. That executive who destroyed pension funds, he's serving time as a Depression-era banker animatronic in store 4055. The human trafficker the police could never catch? She's the twisted nurse in store number 5501 Spirit Halloween corporate knows. They all know. Every year they send me lists of stores that need special inventory. Every year I facilitate the displays. But here's what corporate doesn't know. I've been keeping my own ledger. Every executive who knowingly signed the contracts, every board member who profited from this arrangement, they're all in my book. And the collector? He's interested, very interested, because it turns out making a deal with something like him and then trying to profit from it, trying to use it for corporate gain, that's a special kind of betrayal, the kind that carries its own debt. This year, 2023, several senior executives are retiring. They think they're escaping, moving to their beach houses and private islands. They're wrong. The collector has been very patient, but patience isn't forgiveness. And some debts come due with interest. If you're reading this and you work for Spirit Halloween Corporate, check page 47 of your contract. Check subsection 13B and ask yourself, what exactly did you agree to? Because the collector keeps perfect records, and so do I. Confession number 4. The final performance. I'm Jamie. Madison already told you part of my story, but she doesn't know what happened after. She doesn't know why I really quit. She doesn't know what I found in the corporate database before they locked me out. And she definitely doesn't know that I went back. After Madison's story, after I found that second Ringmaster, I should have walked away. But I couldn't. I needed answers. Why our store? Why us? What was so special about location Nipper 1847? So I did what I do best. I hacked into the system. Not Spirit Halloween's regular corporate network, but the deeper one. The one that runs on servers that shouldn't exist, with file structures that hurt to look at. I found out that store Tsurjummer 1847 wasn't random. The location used to be something else. The Riverside Grand Theater, built in 1921. It hosted vaudeville shows, then movies, then nothing. It was abandoned for 40 years before Spirit Halloween started leasing it. But here's what the records don't tell you. The Riverside Grand Theater's last show was on October 31st, 1962. A traveling performance troupe called the Eternal Encore was doing their final show of the season. During the climax, a fire broke out. The exits were chained. Everyone died, performers and audience alike. 43 souls. The fire was ruled an accident, but I found the real story in those hidden files. The theater owner, William Ashford, had made a deal. He was bankrupt, about to lose everything, so he made a bargain with something old, something that feeds on spectacle and sacrifice. The fire wasn't an accident. It was payment, and now every year those 43 souls are still performing, still trapped, still serving as entertainment for things that exist in the spaces between life and death. The animatronics aren't just possessed. They're portals, windows, and every spirit Halloween built on a site of tragedy becomes a venue for the eternal encore. I mapped it out. There are 400 spirit Halloween stores that open each year. 317 of them are built on locations where multiple deaths occurred. Theaters, hospitals, schools, places where the veil was already thin. And in each of these 317 stores, the same thing happens. Special animatronics arrive. Customers return things they never bought. Employees disappear. Derek didn't just vanish. He became part of the show. On October 30th, 2023, 2 nights ago, I went back to store number 1847. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed proof. Maybe something was calling me. The store was supposed to be closed for inventory, but the lights were on. All of them. And I could hear music. Orchestra music. Like from an old movie. I used my old key. They never changed the locks. And went inside. The store had been transformed. The cheap Halloween decorations were gone. In their place was elegance. Red velvet curtains, gold-painted columns, a chandelier made of what looked like crystallized tears. It was the Riverside Grand Theater, restored to its 1962 glory. And there, on a stage that shouldn't exist, was the performance. 43 animatronics all moving with perfect precision. Dancing, singing, though no sound came from their mouths. Acting out some incomprehensible play. And in the audience, sitting in chairs that materialized from shadow, were the customers. The ones who'd been returning things all month. They weren't people anymore. They were empty, hollow, watching the show with vacant eyes, applauding at intervals that made no sense. And there, in the front row, was Derek. He was still wearing his Spirit Halloween manager shirt, but his face was wrong. Too pale, too still. His eyes reflected the stage lights like glass. The Ringmaster stood at center stage, both versions of him now merged into one terrible figure. He saw me immediately. "Ah," he said, his voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "Our final performer has arrived." I tried to run, but the doors were gone. The walls were gone. There was only the theater, infinite and inescapable. "Every show needs a finale," the Ringmaster continued. "And you, Jamie Chen, are going to give us one." The other animatronics turned to look at me. In their faces, I saw flashes of who they used to be. The performers from 1962, still young, still terrified, still burning. "Join us," they said in unison. "The show must go on." But then I remembered something from the files, something about the original deal William Ashford made. The performance could only continue as long as there was an audience. No audience, no show. No show, no power. I pulled out my phone and did the only thing I could think of. I started live streaming. "This is Jamie Chen at Spirit Halloween store number 1847, I said to my phone. "What you're about to see is real." The Ringmaster laughed. "No one will believe you." But he was wrong. People watched. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. And as they watched, something changed. The theater began to flicker. The animatronics moved more slowly, because here's the thing about curses, about deals with dark things. They rely on secrecy. They need shadows to survive. And I was shining a light directly on them. The viewers started commenting, sharing, spreading the stream. Spirit Halloween Truth began trending. And with each new viewer, the theater became less solid, less real. The Ringmaster's laugh turned to rage. "You don't know what you're doing. The deal must be honored. The show must go on." "No," I said. "The show's over." The stream hit 100,000 viewers. The theater shattered like glass. I found myself standing in the empty Spirit Halloween store surrounded by regular, non-moving animatronics. The elegant theater was gone. The audience was gone, but Derek was still there. Still pale, still wrong, but aware now. He looked at me with eyes that held 60 years of borrowed performance. "Thank you," he whispered. And then he collapsed. Not dead. The paramedics said he was in some kind of coma. He's still in the hospital, still unconscious. But sometimes he moves his hands like he's conducting an orchestra. My live stream was deleted within minutes. My account was banned. Every recording vanished. But people remember. People saw. And that's when I got the email. It was from an address that was just numbers, 1962103143 and eternal.enc. The message was simple. The finale was postponed, not canceled. The contract with William Ashford states clearly, 43 souls for 43 years of success. He got his years. We're still owed 23 souls. And you, Jamie Chen, just volunteered to help us collect. Attached was a list of 23 names. My name was number 1. The others were all Spirit Halloween employees from store number 1847, past and present. Madison was number 7. I've tried to warn them all. Some believed me, some didn't, but it doesn't matter. Because last night, October 31st, 2023, at midnight, everyone on that list received the same package, a ticket to the Riverside Grand Theater's grand finale performance. Date, November 1st, 2023. Time, midnight. Attendance, mandatory. The ticket burns when you try to destroy it. It reappears when you throw it away. And when you hold it, you can hear the orchestra warming up. Madison called me an hour ago. She got her ticket. She's driving here now. We're going to face this together because we figured something out. The original fire in 1962, there were supposed to be 43 victims, but the records are wrong. There were only 42. One person survived, a young stagehand named Michael Marver, Joseph Marver's father. Spirit Halloween wasn't built on a business plan. It was built on a blood debt. And every year, in 317 stores across the country, that debt gets paid. But this year, we're going to break the cycle. We're going to end the eternal encore. Or we're going to become part of it. Sound of knocking. Madison's here. We're going to the theater now. If you don't hear from us again, you'll know what happened. But if you work at a Spirit Halloween, if you've seen things you can't explain, if you've been contacted by something calling itself the Eternal Encore, don't go to the performance. Burn the ticket. Burn the store if you have to, because the show doesn't have to go on. Not anymore. Recording ends. Epilogue. After dark horrors, static clears, somber music plays. The recordings you just heard were sent to me over the course of 3 weeks. Madison, Tyler, Rachel, and Jamie all reached out independently, all desperate to share their stories before whatever happened to them. I've tried to contact each of them. Madison's phone goes straight to voicemail. Tyler's apartment is empty. Neighbors say he left in the middle of the night and never came back. Rachel still works in retail, but she won't return my calls, and her LinkedIn shows she's now a special acquisitions consultant for a company that doesn't seem to exist. And Jamie? Jamie's live stream did happen. I found 17 people who remember watching it, though none of them saved it. They all described the same thing: a theater that shouldn't exist, animatronics that moved too naturally, and a growing sense of dread that made them close the stream before it ended. Spirit Halloween Corporate declined to comment on these stories. They cited pending litigation and the need to protect trade secrets. But I did get one interesting response from a former executive who agreed to speak off the record. Every successful business has its secrets. Some companies hide their recipes. Some hide their manufacturing processes. We just hide different things that are better left hidden for everyone's safety. I've done my own research into the 317 stores mentioned in Jamie's confession. They do exist, and each one has an unusual number of employee turnover, inventory discrepancies, and customer complaints about unsettling experiences. More importantly, I've found similar patterns at other seasonal Halloween stores, Party City's pop-up locations, Halloween Express, even some local independent shops. It seems Spirit Halloween isn't unique in whatever arrangement they've made. As I record this, it's November 2nd, 2023. The Spirit Halloween stores have closed for the season. The vacant storefronts stand empty again, waiting for next year's resurrection. But if you look carefully at these empty stores, if you peer through the dusty windows at just the right angle, In just the right light, you might see them. The animatronics that were never sold, still standing in the darkness, still waiting, still watching, and sometimes, if you listen carefully, you can hear it. Carnival music, playing backwards, an orchestra tuning up, the sound of something dancing alone in the dark. The employees who sent me these confessions wanted them shared for a reason. They wanted to warn us. They wanted us to know that some Halloween scares don't end when October does. They wanted us to understand that every year, when those Spirit Halloween stores open their doors, they're not just selling costumes and decorations, they're opening doorways. And some things, once invited in, never really leave. Thank you for joining me tonight on After Dark Horrors. If these stories disturbed you, if they made you think twice about that seasonal retail job, then perhaps that's for the best. Share this video with someone who needs to hear these warnings. Leave a comment if you've had your own experiences at Spirit Halloween or similar stores. And remember, some stories are too dangerous to stay buried. Until next time, dear listeners, stay safe, stay aware, and whatever you do, if you receive a returned animatronic at your store, don't wind it up at midnight.